welcome back to another deep dive. You know the drill. You send us the source material, we break it down. We pick out the most interesting parts and kind of summarize it for you. And today's topic, oh boy, today's topic is a fascinating one. We're going deep on data compensation.
Yeah, this is it's one that's been gaining a lot of attention recently, and for good reason, I think.
Yeah.
We're talking about a potential fundamental shift in how we think about, data and its value in the digital economy. Like it's a really big deal. This could be huge.
Okay, so let's set the stage a little bit here.
Mhm.
I think we all know by now that companies are collecting tons and tons of data about us. Every single click, every purchase, it's all being tracked and analyzed. But what's really interesting is the scale of this whole thing. We're talking about a data economy worth hundreds of billions of dollars, all
Mhm.
built on our digital footprints.
And that's really just the tip of the iceberg when you think about it. The ways companies collect and monetize data are evolving all the time. I mean, constantly. We're seeing everything from targeted advertising to super sophisticated AI models to predictive analytics, and it's all fueled by, the data we generate.
Right. So let's get into some specifics. One of the sources we looked at really dives deep into how these companies, like the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, how they built these empires using this model. They collect massive amounts of data on basically everything we do online, our browsing habits, our social interactions, our preferences, all of it. And then they turn around and sell that information to advertisers who want to target us with these hyper-specific ads.
Yeah, it's crazy. In 2023 alone, Facebook's ad revenue was over $100 billion. It's just a staggering figure. It just really highlights the immense value of the data that we're all collectively generating.
And it's not just advertising, right? It goes way beyond that. Companies are using our data to personalize our experiences, to recommend products and services, and even try to influence our decisions.
Mhm.
We think about how Amazon suggests products based on your browsing history, or how Netflix curates recommendations based on what you've watched. It's all driven by data. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah, and it's not just limited to these big tech companies either. I mean, retailers like Target and Walmart, they use data to optimize product placement and, how much stuff they have in stock and things like that. Financial institutions use data to assess, our creditworthiness. Even healthcare providers are using data to personalize treatments and predict health outcomes. It's everywhere you look.
So the question becomes, if our data is so valuable, why aren't we being compensated for it? It's like, we're the product, right? But we're
Yeah.
not getting paid.
Yeah, that's the core argument behind this whole data compensation movement. It's about recognizing that, our data is a valuable asset and that we deserve to be compensated for its use, just like any other resource would be.
And one of the sources we looked at actually put a number on it. They're suggesting that if companies paid just $5 per month per user, that could pump over $270 billion annually back into the global economy. That's a real number.
Yeah, and think about the potential impact of that. I mean, that kind of wealth redistribution could be huge. It could potentially help reduce income inequality, stimulate economic growth, even foster, new innovation. It's really exciting to think about.
But how would this work in practice? I mean, how would data compensation actually be implemented? What are some concrete examples?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Some experts are proposing these opt-in systems where users can choose to share their data with companies in exchange for some kind of compensation. And this could take a lot of different forms. It could be direct cash payments, discounts on products and services, or even contributions to social programs like a universal basic income.
So instead of feeling like our data is being taken from us, we'd have the power to say, hey, I want to be compensated for this. We'd actually be, active participants in the data economy.
Exactly. And I think that shift in power dynamics could really have a ripple effect across the entire digital landscape.
One of the sources also talks about the role of government regulation in this whole thing. Ensuring fair compensation and establishing clear data ownership rights. They argue that just like we have regulations for other industries, we need rules of the road for the data economy.
It really makes you wonder, why hasn't this happened already?
Yeah, it's strange, right? I mean, the current system just seems completely unsustainable. These companies are reaping massive profits from our data, while most of us are just left wondering how it's all happening and what it means for our privacy, you know, and our autonomy as individuals.
And that's where the ethical dimension really comes in. Is it truly fair for these companies to collect and monetize our data without our explicit consent and without offering us a share of the profits? That just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, and our sources really raise some serious questions about the current model. They argue that it's fundamentally unfair and undermines our basic rights as digital citizens. They suggest that data compensation isn't just about economics, it's about justice and equity in the digital age. It's a much bigger issue than people realize, I think.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we all have a stake in the future of the data economy and that we deserve a say in how our data is used and who benefits from it. It's not just about the companies.
So the big question is,
Mhm.
how do we get from where we are now to a world where data compensation is the norm? Like, what are the steps?
It's a complex challenge for sure, but the sources we looked at suggest that a combination of factors could drive this shift, including things like increased consumer awareness and demand for data ownership and compensation and government regulation that establishes clear rules and incentives, and also technological advancements that facilitate transparent data tracking and compensation mechanisms. There are a lot of pieces to this puzzle.
Okay, so let's dig into those factors a little bit more and explore what a future with data compensation might actually look like. What are some of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead?
Well, for starters, there's the question of how to actually value data. It's not as simple as assigning a price tag to each piece of information. There are various factors to consider, such as the type of data, its sensitivity, its potential uses, and the context in which it's collected. It's not a simple thing at all.
Right, so we're not just talking about like putting a price on your latest Google search. It's about understanding the nuances of different data types and developing, fair and transparent valuation models.
Exactly. And then there are the logistical challenges. How do you track data usage across such a vast and complex digital ecosystem? How do you ensure that compensation is distributed fairly and efficiently? How do we prevent fraud and abuse? These are big questions.
Yeah, these are all valid concerns. It's clear that implementing a data compensation system would require careful planning and execution, for sure. It's not something you can just snap your fingers and make happen.
But it's not just about overcoming these technical and logistical hurdles. There's also the challenge of changing mindsets and behaviors. We need to shift from a culture of data exploitation to one of data empowerment.
So how do we get these companies, especially the ones who've built their entire business model on the current system,
Yeah.
how do we get them to embrace this change? I mean, what's in it for them?
Yeah.
Like, why would they do this?
Well, I think as consumers become more aware of the value of their data and the ethical implications of how it's being used, they're going to start demanding more transparency and control. Companies that are seen as exploiting user data are going to face increasing scrutiny and backlash. I think we're already starting to see some of that.
Yeah, we've definitely seen examples of that with data breaches and privacy scandals and, the growing public distrust of big tech. People are starting to wake up to this issue.
Exactly. And as consumers become more savvy about data privacy and ownership, they're going to start voting with their wallets. They're going to choose companies that respect their data and offer them a fair deal.
So in a way, data compensation could become a competitive advantage. Companies that embrace this change could attract and retain customers, enhance their brand reputation, and ultimately boost their bottom line. It makes sense from a business perspective.
It's about recognizing that treating data as a valuable asset and compensating users fairly isn't just the ethical thing to do, it's also good for business.
And I think once one major player takes the leap and implements a successful data compensation model, it's likely to create a ripple effect across the entire industry.
Absolutely. Competition is a powerful motivator. As soon as consumers see that they can get compensated for their data with one platform, they'll start expecting it from others.
It's like a tipping point. Once a critical mass of users and companies adopt this new model, the whole system could shift.
And this could pave the way for a more equitable, transparent, and sustainable data economy, one that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
So, picking up where we left off, let's actually try to imagine what data compensation could look like in action. One of the sources we looked at talks about this really interesting case study, the Brave browser, and its basic attention token, or BAT.
Oh yeah, I've heard of Brave, but I'm not really familiar with BAT. What is that? Can you break that down a little bit? Sure. So Brave is like a privacy-focused web browser. It blocks ads and trackers by default. But here's the interesting part. Users can actually choose to opt into viewing like privacy-respecting ads. And for each ad they view, they earn BAT tokens. That's a pretty cool idea.
So instead of being bombarded with like a million irrelevant ads that are tracking my every move, I can actually choose to see ads that are interesting to me and I get rewarded for my attention. I mean, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's a good system. And it's not just about individual users earning a few tokens here and there either. Content creators can also earn BAT tokens when users choose to support their work. So it's like everyone wins.
So it's like creating this whole new ecosystem for online advertising where everybody benefits. Users have more control over their data and their attention. Content creators get rewarded directly by their audience, and advertisers can reach their target market in a more meaningful way. That sounds pretty good to me.
Exactly. And this is just one example, you know. There are a lot of other models being explored out there, like data cooperatives, personal data stores, blockchain-based platforms. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in this space.
Yeah. One of the sources we looked at goes into the potential impact of data compensation on different industries. I think that's worth exploring a bit. What kind of changes could we see in like the healthcare industry, for example?
That's a good one. Well, imagine a world where patients have more control over their own health data, and they can choose to share it with researchers or pharmaceutical companies in exchange for some sort of compensation.
Yeah, that could be huge for medical research. Instead of relying on these limited data sets, researchers could access this vast pool of data, which would potentially accelerate the development of new treatments and cures.
Absolutely. And it could also empower patients to take a more active role in managing their own health. They could be compensated for sharing their data, which could incentivize them to like track their health metrics and make healthier choices and things like that.
It's like turning your health data into this valuable asset that you can use to improve your well-being. Pretty cool concept.
Yeah, it is. And I think the potential benefits extend beyond healthcare too. Like think about the financial industry, for example.
Okay, so how would data compensation work in the world of finance? Would I get paid for sharing my bank statements or credit card transactions? I mean, is that how it would work?
Well, it's not quite that simple, but the underlying principles definitely apply. Right now, financial institutions collect tons of data about our spending habits, investments, credit history, all that stuff. And they use this data to make lending decisions, assess risk, develop financial products. That's how they make their money.
And they make a lot of money off of it, while we, the consumers who generate this data, see very little in return. It's not really a fair system when you think about it.
No, it's not. But with data compensation, individuals could have more control over how their financial data is used, and they could be compensated for sharing it. It would turn the tables a little bit.
So instead of banks and credit card companies using our data to maximize their profits, they'd have to treat it as a valuable asset that belongs to us, the consumers. I like that. It puts the power back in our hands.
That's the idea. And it could lead to a more transparent and equitable financial system where individuals have more bargaining power and can benefit directly from the data they generate.
Our sources also talk about how data compensation could empower individuals in the gig economy, which I think is a really important point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Think about platforms like Uber and DoorDash. These platforms collect massive amounts of data on driver behavior, customer preferences, traffic patterns, and everything.
And they use that data to optimize their algorithms and, maximize their profits, often at the expense of the drivers and delivery workers who are the ones actually doing all the work.
Yeah, for sure. But with data compensation, these workers could actually be compensated for sharing their data, which could help to level the playing field a little bit and ensure that they receive a fair share of the value they create.
It's about recognizing that the data these workers generate is essential to the success of these platforms and that they deserve to be compensated accordingly.
Precisely. And it's not just about the individual workers either. Data cooperatives could be formed, giving gig workers collective bargaining power and enabling them to negotiate better terms with these platforms. It could really give them some leverage.
That's a powerful idea. It's about workers coming together to leverage their data as a collective asset and demanding a fairer share of the pie. I like that a lot.
Exactly. And this concept could be applied to so many other industries, where data is a key driver of value. From social media platforms to online marketplaces to the whole growing world of the Internet of Things, the possibilities are endless.
Okay, so we've explored some of the potential benefits and applications of data compensation across different industries. But let's be realistic for a second. What are some of the challenges we need to overcome to make this a reality? I mean, I'm sure there are a few, right?
Oh yeah, of course. One of the biggest hurdles is figuring out how to actually value data. It's a super complex issue, as we've discussed. And there's no one-size-fits-all solution. It's going to take some creativity to figure this out.
Yeah, our sources suggest a few different approaches, from market-based pricing to cost-based models to value-based assessments, but they all have their own pros and cons.
Right, and each approach has its own set of complexities and potential pitfalls. Market-based pricing could be susceptible to manipulation. Cost-based models might not accurately reflect the true value of data. And value-based assessments can be really difficult to quantify, especially when you're dealing with intangible benefits like improved user experiences or societal impact. It's tough.
Yeah, it's like trying to put a price tag on something as elusive as human attention or the potential for scientific breakthroughs. It's not easy.
Exactly. And then there's the whole challenge of developing secure and transparent mechanisms for tracking data usage and actually distributing compensation. Like, how do you actually make that happen in a fair and efficient way?
We talked about blockchain earlier and how that could potentially be used to create like a decentralized and immutable record of data transactions. It seems like that could be a good solution.
Right. But even with blockchain, there are still some technical challenges to overcome, such as scalability, interoperability, and the need to protect user privacy while still enabling data sharing and analysis. It's a tricky balance.
So it's not just about building the technology, it's about ensuring that it's used ethically and responsibly, which always a concern with new technology.
Oh, for sure. And then, of course, there are the legal and regulatory hurdles. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty around data ownership and, the rights of individuals to control how their data is used. That needs to be sorted out.
Yeah, we need clear and consistent regulations that recognize data as a valuable asset, protect user privacy, and establish fair and transparent rules for data compensation. Without that, it's going to be a free-for-all.
Exactly. And this is going to require collaboration and coordination between governments, businesses, and civil society. It's a complex challenge, but it's one that we need to address if we want to create a more equitable and sustainable digital economy. It's a big task, but I think it's worth it.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential benefits, the challenges, and the need for collaboration. But let's zoom out for a minute and talk about the bigger picture. Why is data compensation so important? Like, what's at stake here? I mean, it seems like kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it's huge. I think it all boils down to a fundamental question of fairness and power in the digital age. Right now, a handful of powerful companies are extracting vast amounts of value from our data, while most of us are just left wondering how it's all happening and what it means for our lives.
It's like we're sleepwalking into this future where our data is being used to shape our experiences, our choices, even our identities without our full understanding or consent. It's kind of a scary thought.
Exactly. And that's why I think data compensation is so crucial. It's about recognizing that we all have a stake in the future of the data economy and that we deserve a say in how our data is used and who benefits from it. We can't let these companies control everything.
It's about shifting the balance of power from corporations to individuals, from data exploitation to data empowerment. It's a really important shift.
It's about creating a digital world that is more equitable, transparent, and accountable, where data is used to benefit society as a whole, not just a select few. That's what we should be striving for.
So let's dive into some specific examples of how data compensation could actually empower individuals, drive innovation, and create a more just and sustainable digital economy. There's a lot more to explore here. All right, so we've talked about all the potential upsides of data compensation and some of the challenges in making it a reality. But there's another piece to this whole thing that we need to think about the role of companies. Like, why would companies, especially the ones who've built these giant empires, on the current data-hungry model, why would they embrace this change? It kind of seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a valid concern. On the surface, it does seem kind of crazy, like asking a company to pay for something they're already getting for free right away. But I think the reality is that things are changing. The landscape is shifting.
You mean consumers are becoming more aware of how their data is being used, and they're starting to push back a little bit, like they're not just going to take it anymore?
Exactly. The sources we've looked at really highlight this point. Consumer trust is becoming like a make-or-break factor in the digital economy. Companies that are seen as exploiting user data are going to face increasing scrutiny, backlash, boycotts even.
Yeah, we've seen that already. Data breaches, privacy scandals, those shady data brokers selling our information to anyone who'll pay. It's all eroding public trust in these big tech companies.
And in a world where consumers have more choices than ever before, trust is a powerful differentiator. Companies that are transparent about their data practices and that treat user data as a valuable asset instead of just something to exploit, they're the ones who are going to win in the long run.
So by embracing data compensation, companies could actually improve their image, attract new customers, build stronger relationships with existing ones. It's not just about being ethical, it's good business.
Exactly. It's about aligning business interests with ethical considerations. And there's actually a growing body of evidence that suggests this approach can be super profitable.
One of our sources mentioned a study that found that companies with strong data privacy practices actually outperform their competitors in terms of revenue growth and customer satisfaction, which is kind of surprising when you think about it.
Yeah, it makes sense though, right? When consumers trust a company with their data, they're more likely to share more information, engage more frequently, and recommend the company to others. It's a positive feedback loop.
It's a win-win situation.
Right.
Consumers feel valued and empowered, and companies benefit from increased trust, loyalty, and ultimately more money. Everybody's happy.
Exactly. And it's not just about the bottom line either. Data compensation could also be a huge driver of innovation.
Now that's interesting. How would paying for data lead to more innovation? I don't quite see the connection there.
Well, think about it this way. When you have to pay for something, you tend to be more mindful of how you use it, right? You don't want to waste it. The same principle applies to data.
So if companies are actually having to pay for data, they're more likely to use it wisely and efficiently, focus on projects that have real value and impact. No more just collecting data for the sake of it.
Exactly. They're less likely to waste resources collecting and hoarding data just in case. And they're more likely to invest in developing innovative products and services that actually meet the needs of their users instead of just trying to extract as much value as possible from the data they already have.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention. By putting a price on data, we're creating an incentive for companies to be more creative and resourceful in how they use it.
Precisely. And this could lead to a much more dynamic and vibrant data economy with new business models, new technologies, new opportunities for everyone.
One of our sources even suggested that data compensation could help address some of the big societal challenges we're facing, like income inequality and the digital divide.
Yeah, for sure. If we design the system right, data compensation could be a really powerful tool for redistributing wealth and empowering those who are currently excluded from the benefits of the digital economy.
Imagine a world where everyone has the opportunity to share in the value that their data creates, regardless of their socioeconomic status, location, or level of digital literacy. That would be amazing.
It's a powerful vision, and I think it's one worth striving for. But it's important to acknowledge that there are still some big hurdles to overcome. We need to develop those fair and transparent valuation models, establish clear rules around data ownership and privacy, create robust mechanisms for tracking data usage, and distributing compensation. There's still a lot of work to do.
It's a complex challenge, but it's one that we absolutely have to address. I mean, the future of the digital economy and really the future of our society depends on how we handle this.
So let's wrap up this deep dive with a call to action for our listeners. What can they do to help make data compensation a reality?
First and foremost, stay informed. Keep learning about the issues, the potential solutions, and the different perspectives on this topic. It's complex, there's a lot to learn. And then share what you learn with your friends, family, colleagues, spread the word.
Yeah, get involved in the conversation, talk to your elected officials, reach out to companies you do business with, and let them know that you support data ownership and compensation. Make your voice heard.
And look for ways to take control of your own data. Consider using privacy-focused browsers and apps, explore personal data stores, and data cooperatives support companies that are already implementing ethical data practices. Every little bit helps.
The future of the data economy isn't set in stone. It's up to all of us to shape it. By demanding transparency, fairness, and accountability, we can create a digital world that benefits everyone, not just the powerful few.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into data compensation. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little inspiring. Remember, the power to change the system is in our hands.